We talk a lot about these massive economic shifts, but how do they actually happen? It's almost never just one single invention. Nope, it's a convergence, a moment when different technologies slam together and just rewrite the rules of civilization. Today, we're going to dig into a huge theory about the next great economic revolution and a company that's claiming, hey, we're building the toolkit to make it a reality. So it really all starts with this powerful idea from the economic theorist Jeremy Rifkin. His whole argument is that if you look through history, the real trigger for fundamental, ground-shaking change is when a new way to communicate converges with a new way to generate energy. He sees that combination as the true engine of history, and he believes that engine is firing up again right now. Rifkin calls this the third industrial revolution, and the key here is it's not just about having solar panels over here and faster internet over there. It's about a new communication internet, a renewable energy internet, and an automated logistics internet all merging together into one single, intelligent network. It's kind of like a super internet for managing the physical world. And if you think about it, we've seen this exact pattern before. The first industrial revolution? That was steam power plus the printing press, which completely reorganized life around the factory. The second? That was centralized electricity, oil, and the telephone coming together to build our modern cities. And the third, as you can see, is aiming for something totally different, a smart, distributed, and sustainable infrastructure for the whole planet. Now, Rifkin isn't just talking theory. He actually provides a blueprint, and it has these 5 pillars that are designed to be built together. You can't just have one. You need the shift to renewables, sure, but you also need a way to collect that energy on every building. You need storage for when it's dark or the wind isn't blowing, a smart grid to share all that power, and electric transport to use it efficiently. They're like 5 interlocking pieces of a whole new economic puzzle. So that's the theory. It's this grand, world-changing vision, but it begs a massive question. Is anyone actually trying to build all 5 of those pillars at the same time? I mean, who is out there building the physical hardware for this convergence of energy, communication, and logistics? Well, that question leads us directly to a venture studio called DeReticular, and they are positioning themselves as the builders of what they call a digital nervous system for post-grid civilization. You could say their entire business model is basically an attempt to put Jeremy Rifkin's theory directly into practice. Their whole philosophy is wrapped up in this idea they call spherical resilience. The goal is to empower a community, whether it's a small town, an industrial park, or a farm, to operate in what they call island mode. That means being completely self-sufficient, totally independent of those fragile, centralized grids for your power, your internet, and even your finances. So how do they do it? Well, they've built this thing called the sovereign stack. And honestly, the best way to think about it is as a civilization in a box. It's a direct physical manifestation of that convergence that Rifkin was talking about. Let's break down what's actually in the box. First, you've got the heart of the system, power. And they solve the single biggest problem with renewables, the fact that they're intermittent, by using plasma gasification. This lets them take local waste, like agricultural scraps or even just plain old trash, and turn it into continuous 24/7 base load power. Pretty cool. Second, every system needs a brain. For them, it's an AI-native operating system they call RIOS. What it does is bond together multiple internet sources, like Starlink and 5G, to create unbreakable connectivity. And then it autonomously manages all the physical hardware, deciding when to store power, when to sell it, or when to use it for local computing. And third, you have the motion. This comes in the form of autonomous electric rovers for logistics, and they're all powered by and coordinated within this little self-contained ecosystem. So there you have it, the convergence, a new energy system, a new communication and intelligence system, and a new logistics system, all packed into one stack. Okay, this is really important. This tech leads to a massive strategic pivot for them, starting in 2026. See, they're not just trying to be a hardware maker anymore, selling a box for a one-time fee. No, they want to be a platform operator. Instead of a low-margin one-time sale, they're moving to a model of licensing an entire economy that runs on their hardware. We're talking high-margin, recurring revenue. So how in the world do they get there? With a pretty clever strategy they call Flood the Forge. They're using a major startup competition to basically recruit an army of developers to build new applications on top of their iOS operating system. Think of it like creating an app store, but instead of iPhone games, it's for real-world infrastructure. And this isn't just about getting some cool apps made. This is a brilliant business strategy,
Because if a startup builds, say, a medical drone delivery app on iOS, well, that app only works where there's a DeReticular node. They've just created a permanent, locked-in customer for their hardware. The hardware becomes the distribution channel for a whole new economy.
Okay, so you're probably thinking, this hardware has to be crazy expensive. How do you finance this kind of revolution, especially in emerging markets where a farmer doesn't have a few $100,000 lying around for a down payment? Well, this is where their financial engineering gets really interesting.
This is their proof of industry concept in action. Picture this. A farmer in Uganda takes some hemp waste, something that used to be seen as worthless, and feeds it into the machine. The RIOS node uses sensors to verify exactly what it is and how much energy it can produce. That verification then creates a digital token, a bioenergy credit, which becomes a real-world asset the farmer can use as collateral to get a loan from global DeFi markets. They are literally turning waste into a bankable asset. Now, the reason this whole thing works, where other crypto lending ideas have failed, is that the RIOS node acts as what they call a zero-trust oracle. Just think of it as a super secure, incorruptible verifier. It uses some really sophisticated tech to physically prove that the data is coming from a real machine on the ground, not some scammer faking it on a laptop. It completely solves the garbage in, garbage out problem for real-world assets. And they're not doing this in some regulatory Wild West. They're actually being incredibly smart, building their financial platform to align perfectly with new U.S. crypto regulations. Under the Genius Act, they'll use compliant, bank-issued stablecoins for all the loans. And under the Clarity Act, they're classifying their bioenergy tokens as commodities, not securities. Now that's a key move because it opens them up to much larger, much safer pools of institutional money.
So what's the potential scale here? I mean, what are the financial stakes we're really talking about? DeReticular is going after a sector called decentralized physical infrastructure, or DePIN for short. It's basically the entire market for building real-world stuff, energy grids, cell towers, you name it, using blockchain and tokens. And get this, analysts are projecting this market is going to be worth a staggering $3.5 trillion by 2028. And if you look at their own financial projections, you see that classic venture J-curve. There's a big investment year in 2026 to flood the forge and build that ecosystem, which leads to a loss. Then, a quick pivot to break even in 2027 as the software licensing starts to kick in. And then, if the model works, just explosive profitability in year 3 as that platform flywheel really starts spinning. But let's be real for a second. The risks here are absolutely immense. I mean, executing complex hardware deployments in places like rural Uganda is incredibly difficult. Their whole platform model depends on developers actually showing up to build apps. And of course, there's always the looming threat that a giant like Amazon or SpaceX should decide to enter this space and just try to crush them. And that leaves us with the really big question, right? Is DeReticular's sovereign stack the actual tangible blueprint for a resilient post-grid future? Are they actually putting Rifkin's third industrial revolution into action? Or is this whole vision just too complex, too expensive, and maybe too fragile to ever achieve a global scale? You know, in the end, their success might not even come down to the hardware itself. The technology works. It's probably all going to hinge on whether they can execute that flood the forge strategy, if they can really turn their app store for infrastructure from just a cool idea into a thriving, self-sustaining economy. That's the real test. That's what we'll all be watching.